In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far away from the noise of powerful empires and mighty fleets, the Lyrani lived simple and peaceful lives. They were a gentle species, small in size and delicate in nature, with soft blue skin and large glowing eyes that always seemed to hold curiosity rather than fear. Their world was calm, full of forests that shone with bioluminescent plants and rivers that carried silver-colored water. For generations they believed that harmony was the only way to survive. They built their society around trust, cooperation, and kindness. Weapons were almost unheard of. Even the concept of war felt like something from an old myth, something that happened to other civilizations, not to them. Their planet, Lyranus 4, was protected not by armies but by alliances. Neighboring species, stronger and more advanced in military technology, often promised to come if danger ever appeared. The Lyrani believed in these promises with all their hearts. They trusted the galaxy just as they trusted each other, and because they had never been tested by true danger, their trust remained unshaken. Their elders taught young ones that the universe was full of good-hearted beings who cared for one another, and no outsider would ever wish harm upon them without reason. But the galaxy was far larger and far harsher than the Lyrani ever realized. In distant regions whose names they barely recognized, stories were whispered about dangerous species beings who evolved on worlds so deadly that even the strongest creatures would struggle to survive there. Among these species were the humans, known throughout the stars as the Deathworlders. The name alone made many civilizations shiver. It came from the classification of their home, Earth, which was considered one of the most dangerous inhabited planets ever discovered. From toxic flora to powerful predators to violent weather, humans had grown up fighting against their own environment. And because they had survived all of it, they carried a strength, both physical and mental, that other species could not understand. Rumors traveled faster than truth in the galaxy. Some described humans as unstoppable warriors. Others said humans acted first and asked questions later. A few believed humans had no fear at all. Stories of their battles, their victories, and their unpredictable nature spread far, sometimes exaggerated and sometimes entirely fabricated. As a result, many peaceful species tried to avoid humans whenever possible. They respected their power but preferred to keep their distance. To most cultures, Deathworlder was a warning dot to the Lyrani. However, humans were little more than distant legends. They had never met one. They had never traded with them, never communicated with them, and certainly never imagined that they would one day rely on them. Instead, they admired the humans from afar, fascinated by tales of their bravery but convinced such beings would never cross paths with their quiet, harmless world. The Lyrani were too insignificant, too peaceful, too far away to attract the attention of Deathworlders, yet the galaxy kept shifting, changing, and moving, and danger often crept into the places least prepared for it. The Lyrani lived under a silent assumption that peace was permanent. Their entire civilization grew around this belief. They built no weapons, no defense systems, no battle strategies. Their technology was focused on healing, learning, and preserving nature. Their leaders held meetings about agriculture, education, and cultural celebrations rather than military readiness. The idea that someone might attack them felt almost laughable, like a nightmare that children would forget once morning came. Their vulnerability, however, did not come from ignorance but from innocence. They had lived so long in safety that they failed to imagine anything else. Their elders always said, "The galaxy is kinder than we think," and so, they trusted. They trusted alliances, they trusted treaties, they trusted ancient promises written long before any living Lyrani were born. But far beyond Lyranus, in darker parts of the galaxy, another reputation was rising: the HFY Marauders. They were raiders, ruthless and cunning, known for targeting unprepared worlds. They cared nothing about peace, culture, or life. They cared only about resources, and they took them by force. They destroyed settlements, enslaved populations, and stripped planets of anything valuable. Their ships left behind black smoke and silence. They had once been a small pirate group, but over the years they grew powerful, feeding off weak or isolated systems. Their name struck fear into anyone who recognized it. The Lyrani had heard the name before, but only as a distant warning, something that would never touch their own planet. They assumed the HFY were too far away and that their allies would protect them if anything ever happened. They believed that diplomacy, kindness, and alliances would shield them from any threat, and so they continued their lives without fear, celebrating festivals under glowing trees, building homes carved from crystal-like stone, and welcoming travelers who passed by with warm hearts and open hands. If someone had told them that the HFY Marauders had set their sights on Lyranus, the Lyrani would not have believed it. They would have laughed nervously, dismissed it as a misunderstanding, and trusted that the universe would never allow such cruelty to reach them. After all, they had done nothing to deserve harm. They had no enemies, no disputes, no conflicts. They lived by the belief that goodwill always returned in kind. But the universe does not follow beliefs. It follows opportunity. And to the HFY, Lyranus 4 looked like a perfect target rich in natural resources, undefended, and isolated. The Marauders did not care about peace or innocence. They saw value, and they intended to take it as whispers of trouble drifted across star systems. The Lyrani continued their daily lives, unaware of the storm forming around them. They walked through glowing gardens, studied ancient songs, and discussed philosophy under moonlit skies. Their children chased floating lights that danced between the trees, and their elders told stories of old friendships with neighboring species. Their world was beautiful, calm, and untouched, like a delicate glass ornament placed in the middle of a battlefield. No one in their society could imagine that this peace might shatter in a matter of days. Meanwhile, far away from the Lyrani's peaceful world, human special forces units patrolled dangerous regions of space. Unlike most species, humans did not trust the galaxy to remain calm. They had learned, again and again throughout their history, that danger could come at any moment. Their survival instincts were woven deep into their culture. Even in times of peace, humans prepared for war. And because of this, they often stumbled into situations no one else wanted to face, though the Lyrani had no idea. The universe was about to bring these two very different species together. One gentle and fragile, the other fierce and battle. One believing in peace above all else, the other shaped by conflict. Their fates were quietly approaching each other, slowly becoming intertwined even though neither side knew it yet. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, a fragile signal waited to be sent. A signal that would carry the fears of a helpless people. A signal that would travel through the void, uncertain of who might hear it. A signal that would change everything. Because when danger finally arrived at the Lyrani would do the only thing they could, call for help, and the ones who answered that call would not be who they expected. The early days of the crisis on Lyranus 4 began quietly, almost too quietly, in a way that made the Lyrani believe everything was still normal. Their planet was calm as always, filled with its gentle glowing forests and peaceful cities made of crystal-like stone. Children continued to play in the soft, shimmering light beneath the trees, while adults worked on their daily routines, tending gardens, caring for animals, studying ancient knowledge, and teaching young ones the traditions passed through generations. Nothing looked different on the surface, but far above their skies, danger was moving closer with every hour. It started with a strange reading, detected by one of the Lyrani's long-range observation towers. These towers were old, built many centuries earlier when the Lyrani joined a regional alliance. They were not military detectors, only simple instruments meant to track asteroids or monitor the movement of nearby trade routes. Their screens showed the usual patterns: transport vessels passing by, small civilian crafts visiting the region, and the natural drift of cosmic dust. But then, one morning the patterns changed. The operator on duty, a gentle-natured Lyrani named Ferial, noticed something odd on the screen. A large object, moving slowly but steadily toward their system, appeared out of nowhere. At first she thought it was a cargo ship or a research vessel, but the object did not broadcast any identification codes. In fact, its signal was so faint and irregular that she thought the machine was malfunctioning. She restarted it twice, cleaned the panel, and recalibrated the sensors. The unidentified object still appeared in the same place, moving with purpose. She reported this to a supervisor who listened patiently. But like many Lyrani, he preferred calm explanations over alarming ones. He suggested it was probably an old, drifting ship that had lost power. Perhaps it was even a derelict vessel abandoned by some unknown travelers. He assured her that there was no reason to worry. The Lyrani had never faced a threat before. The universe had always been kind to them. Why would it change now? Ferial accepted his answer at first, but deep inside, something made her uneasy. The object's direction was too exact, too steady, too intentional. It was heading straight toward Lyra NN-4. Over the next few days, more strange readings appeared. First 1, then 3, then 7 objects were detected, all silent, all without identification codes, all moving toward their world. The Lyrani were confused but still tried to believe it was harmless. Many thought it was a caravan of travelers seeking refuge or traders coming to exchange goods. The Lyrani, after all, were known for their kindness. Visitors were always welcome. But those who studied interstellar signals noticed something disturbing. The objects were not drifting at all. They were ships moving in formation. Only warships traveled in formation. The Lyrani had no military experts. Their scientists studied nature and healing. Their engineers built homes, not weapons. Nobody truly understood how to read a hostile approach. But they did understand fear. And slowly, that fear began to spread in whispers, like a small fire catching on dry leaves. The leaders of Lyranus 4 gathered for an emergency meeting. They had not held a serious crisis meeting in over 3 generations. Their council chamber, a grand hall decorated with glowing vines and crystal arches, was a place for discussion and philosophy, not strategy. But that day, every seat was filled. Elders, scholars, healers, diplomats, and community representatives all came together. Their expressions worried. They discussed the mysterious ships, their purpose, and what to do. Most wanted to contact neighboring civilizations who had once promised protection. They believed those allies would come if asked. After all, treaties had been signed. Agreements had been honored for centuries. The Lirini had always helped others in need. Surely others would return the kindness. Messages were sent immediately, short, urgent calls for information and support. But the silence that followed was heavier than fear itself. No one replied at first. The council thought it was a communication failure, so they tried again, then again, and again. Still nothing. It was only later that they learned the truth. The alliances they trusted had weakened over time. Political shifts, wars, and resource shortages had left their allies struggling with their own problems. Some had even abandoned their posts near Lirini space. Others simply chose not to involve themselves with what they believed was a hopeless situation. Meanwhile, the ships kept coming closer. News finally reached the council that the incoming fleet belonged to the Vorkai Marauders, one of the most feared raider groups known across several sectors. This information came from a passing merchant vessel that barely escaped the Marauders' territory. The merchant transmitted a rushed warning before jumping to faster-than-light travel. The message confirmed the worst fears. The Vorkai were heading directly for Lyra NN-4. Panic spread quickly across the planet. Streets that were usually full of calm and laughter filled with frightened voices. Families gathered their children, unsure of where to hide. Elders tried to reassure everyone, but even their peaceful wisdom could not erase the terror that settled in the hearts of the Lirini. They had no army. They had no defense fleet. Their ships were small and slow, meant for exploration or transport, not battle. They had no trained soldiers, only healers and scholars. Their beautiful glowing cities had no shields, no bunkers, no fortified walls. In desperation, the council considered evacuation, but it was impossible. The Lirini had only a handful of ships, far too few to move their entire population. Even if they tried, the Vorkai would intercept them in space. There was no escape. That was when the oldest elder in the council, a wise Lyroni named Ilshara, suggested sending a universal SOS signal. It was an ancient emergency beacon designed to reach any listening ship, regardless of species or allegiance. It was risky. Anyone could hear it, even hostile groups. But the Lirini had no choice. Their alliances had failed. Their defenses were non-existent. Their planet's fate rested on a desperate hope. The council agreed in a quiet ceremony. As tradition demanded, they activated the SOS transmitter. A soft, glowing pulse rose from the center of the city, sending a message into the endless darkness of space. It was a simple signal, but filled with emotion, a cry for help from a peaceful species facing destruction. After the signal was sent, the Lirini waited. Hours passed, then a day, then two. No reply came. Their hope faded. Many believed no one had heard the call. Others feared that even if someone did hear it, they would not come in time. Meanwhile, the Vorkai fleet entered the outer edge of Liruni space. Their massive ships, dark and jagged like metal predators, moved closer with terrifying purpose. The Lirini watched from telescopes and windows, trembling as the invaders' shapes became clearer. Every second felt like an eternity. The council tried to stay calm, but fear had reached every corner of society. Parents whispered to their children, trying to be brave. Stores closed, schools emptied. Families gathered in underground shelters, though they knew such places would offer little protection against a full invasion. The glowing forests, once symbols of peace, now cast long shadows that made the nights feel even colder. And yet, even in this fear, the Lirini held on to a tiny spark of hope. Somewhere in the darkness, someone might have heard their SOS somewhere. Maybe a ship was coming. Maybe a distant ally had changed their mind. Maybe a neutral group had chosen to help. They prayed for any miracle, even the smallest one, but the universe remained silent, or so they thought. Far beyond Lirinus 4, in a region of space the Lirini had never explored, a human Special Forces patrol ship drifted through the stars on a long-range recon mission. It was a sleek, dark craft equipped with advanced sensors, powerful engines, and a crew trained for danger in every form. Humans were always ready, always alert. Their instincts made them listen even when others ignored, and somewhere in the middle of their routine monitoring, a faint signal reached their instruments. The SOS from Lyra NN-4. The signal was weak, almost drowned out by cosmic noise. Anyone else would have dismissed it. But humans were different. They understood desperation, they understood danger, and they understood that ignoring a cry for help, even from a species they had never met, was something they could never do. Within minutes, the human commander ordered a course change. Their ship turned sharply, engines roaring to life as they accelerated toward the source of the signal. Their mission had changed. Their destination was now clear. And on Lirinus for the people waited, unaware that help was already on the way. Unaware that the ones answering their call were the very beings. The galaxy called the asterisk as the days passed and the strange fleet moved closer to Lyra. A heavy tension settled over the peaceful planet. Everything that once felt normal began to feel fragile. The glowing forests, the quiet rivers, the calm street soul, the beauty that had always made the Lirini proud, now seemed like a reminder of how unprepared they were. Their world had never known violence, but violence was now racing toward them like a dark storm that could not be stopped. The Lirini tried their best to stay calm, but fear slipped into every conversation, every home, every gathering place. Shops that normally stayed open late began closing early. Schools sent students home. The gentle songs that filled their evenings fell silent. People began gathering in small groups, whispering about the approaching ships, their eyes filled with dread. Nobody wanted to admit it out loud, but everyone knew what the Vorkai marauders were capable of. The stories had spread across the galaxy for years, stories of planets stripped bare, cities reduced to ashes, populations taken as slaves, and Lyranus IV, with all its innocence, looked like an easy target. The council tried their best to maintain hope. They met daily in their crystal-walled chamber, trying to contact distant allies again and again, but there was no reply. It was as if the universe had gone deaf to their cries. Some believed help might still come at the last moment, but others understood the painful truth. They were alone. And when the message of the Vorkai fleet's confirmed identity spread through the cities, hope dimmed even further. Meanwhile, far out in space, the human special forces unit that had received the SOS signal was working quickly. They were used to facing the unexpected. Their missions often brought them into dangerous territories, and they had learned to act instantly when lives were at risk. Their commander, Captain Eric Dalton, was the type of human who never ignored a call for help. His instincts were sharp, his training flawless, and his determination unshakable. The moment he heard the trembling, almost broken SOS from the Lironi, something inside him tightened, not fear, but resolve. To him, a cry for help was not a question. It was a duty. While the Lironi waited in terror, the human ship traveled at maximum speed through the star lanes. Engine cores glowed hot, vibrating through the hull as the vessel surged forward. The crew prepared for possible combat. Weapons were checked, armor was tested, tactical maps were brought online. Every human on board moved with calm purpose. To them, this was another mission, but also something more, a chance to protect a species that clearly had no way to defend itself. Back on Lyranus, fear grew deeper. Families had already begun moving into underground shelters, dark, cramped places that had been built for natural disasters, not for full-scale invasions. The shelters were small and uncomfortable, with limited supplies. They were designed to protect people from storms or earthquakes, not from the firepower of warships. Yet the Lirani had nowhere else to go. Parents tried to comfort their children, but their own hands shook. Many whispered prayers to ancient spirits, hoping for a miracle dot above the atmosphere. The Vorkai fleet had begun to appear as distant dark-shaped small dots at first, but growing clearer each passing hour. Their ships were sharp and angular, covered in scavenged armor plates from previous battles. The Vorkai were not builders. They were destroyers who took whatever they needed from others. Their vessels reflected that. Some pieces were mismatched, some scorched from old fights, but all deadly. And there were many of them. In the observation tower where Ferial had first noticed the unusual readings. She stood again, staring at the screens. Her heart pounded as she watched the marauders' ships grow clearer. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. Her eyes kept following the dark fleet, hoping for some sign that they would turn away, that they would change course, that perhaps she had been wrong all along. But the ships kept coming. Her supervisor joined her, his face pale. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. As panic spread across the planet, the council knew they had no more options. They ordered all non-essential systems shut down to conserve power. Emergency lights flickered in the cities as the main energy grids were rerouted to protect hospitals and communication towers. The Lirani hoped almost foolishly that reducing their power signatures might hide them or make the planet seem less valuable. But deep down, everyone knew the Vorkai were not coming for power signals. They were coming for resources, for control, for conquest. And nothing the Lirani did could hide that. The rising conflict was not just the approach of the enemy, it was the emotional collapse of an entire world realizing that its innocence was not enough to save it. Yet in the middle of this terror, something unexpected happened. Some of the younger Lirani, particularly those who studied xenocultures and interstellar history, began asking questions. Why had no one responded to the SOS? Did the message even reach anyone? Was it possible that it was still traveling through space? Hope flickered, dim but still burning. Maybe someone out there was listening. Maybe someone was coming. But each hour that passed without a response made that hope fade. The Vorkai were too close now. Their ships had entered the outer orbit of Lyranus IV. Their massive shadows cut across the stars, growing larger, more terrifying. The sky began to show faint trails of their engines, glowing like dark wounds across the horizon. In that moment, the Lirani realized something painful. Even if help was coming, it might arrive too late. The council gathered one last time before the expected attack. Their voices trembled as they discussed what little they could do: organize refugees, hide as many people as possible, shut down critical areas that might be targeted first. Their world, which had stood peacefully for centuries, was now preparing for destruction using plans that were incomplete, outdated, and painfully inadequate. During these discussions, the elders encouraged everyone to stay hopeful. They reminded the population of the beauty of their world, the unity of their people, and the belief that kindness always helped in the end. But even the elders' words could not remove the fear that gripped the hearts of the Lironi. It was too strong, too real, too close. Far above them, The Vorkai fleet began opening its weapon ports. Red lights glowed along the hulls of the raider ships as they prepared to deploy their ground forces. Dropships were readied, filled with soldiers wearing jagged armor and carrying brutal weapons designed for intimidation as much as for battle. The Vorkai wanted to make the Lyrani afraid before they even landed. Fear made conquest easier. And yet, at that very same moment, far beyond the planet's sensors, a second fleet was moving, much smaller, almost insignificant compared to the Vorka, but fast, focused, and deadly. The human special forces. The ship had jumped into the final stretch of space, leading to Lyranus 4. Their systems detected the Vorkai fleet instantly. Their sensors mapped every ship, every weapon signature, every threat. The humans understood immediately. The Lyrani had no time left. Captain Dalton didn't hesitate. Prepare for combat entry. His voice carried no fear, only determination. Inside the human ship, alarms sounded not in panic, but in readiness. Weapons were powered, armor suits sealed with mechanical clicks. The soldiers moved like a single living machine, each step filled with purpose. Their mission had changed again. They were no longer responding to a distress call. They were preparing to intervene in a full invasion. And yet, the Lyrani still had no idea that help was racing toward them. Their fear reached its peak when the Vorkai fleet entered low orbit and their dropships began to descend. The sky darkened. Sirens echoed across cities for the first time in their history. The peaceful planet trembled. Families clung to each other in the shelters. Every Lyrani felt the same chilling realization. The invaders were here. But just before the first dropships broke through the atmosphere, another signal appeared in the sky. A bright streak, fast, fiery, unmistakable. It moved not away from the planet but toward it. It cut through the clouds like a burning arrow. The Vorkai dropships shook as shockwaves rippled through the air. The humans had arrived. They were few. They were outnumbered, but they were Deathworlders. And for the first time, the Lyrani's rising conflict turned not toward surrender, but toward the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, they might survive. The night felt heavier than any night the Lyrani had ever lived through. Their moon, usually bright and shimmering like a jewel in the sky, was hidden behind thick black clouds. The wind was silent, the forests were quiet, and even the glowing lakes of their world seemed to dim, as if the planet itself sensed danger approaching. Families stayed inside their small crystal homes, clutching each other, listening with fear to the distant rumbling of engines. The elderly whispered old stories about omens, but nothing in their past had prepared them for what was coming. Then the first explosion shattered the night. It was loud enough to shake the mountains. A bright orange flash lit the sky, followed by a terrible roar that echoed through the valleys. The Lyrani ran outside, trembling, and saw the impossible. Giant marauder dropships slicing through the clouds like metal monsters. Their engines glowed red, and their weapons were already firing, raining destruction onto the peaceful villages below. The sky burned with streaks of fire as more ships descended, forming a terrifying curtain of shadows over the land. The Lyrani knew the marauders well. Everyone in the galaxy did. They were a cruel pirate faction, a band of violent raiders who attacked weak and defenseless planets. Once they chose a target, nothing survived, not cities, not people, not even the forests and oceans. The Lyrani had no army, no ships, nothing strong enough to protect themselves. They were a small, gentle species who valued art, nature, and harmony. War was something they read about in ancient books, not something they ever expected to face. But now the nightmare was real as the first dropships landed. The pirate soldiers poured out, laughing wickedly. Their armor was patched together from stolen pieces. Their weapons crackled with unstable energy, and their faces were covered with markings made from the ashes of worlds they had destroyed. They marched through the fields confidently, knowing the Lyrani could not resist. Lights flickered across the sky as another wave of enemy ships approached, ready to land in the heart of the largest town. People screamed. Children cried. The Lyrani elders stepped forward, trying to form a barrier, though they had no weapons. They thought maybe they could talk, reason, or beg, but the marauders never talked. They only took dot just when the first group of raiders raised their rifles to fire into the crowd. The ground trembled beneath everyone's feet. At first, the Lyrani thought it was another explosion, but the vibration was different, sharp, powerful, almost rhythmic, like something huge was dropping from the sky. Then a streak of burning light shot across the heavens. At first, no one understood what it was. It moved too fast to be a raider ship, and its shape was too sleek, too dark, almost like a shadow wrapped in fire. The pirates turned their heads upward just in time to see the black vessel tear through the clouds, leaving a glowing trail behind it. It wasn't falling out of control, it was diving on purpose. The ship slammed into the battlefield with a force that sent dust and shockwaves across the entire valley. The marauders stumbled, some falling to the ground from the sudden impact. The Lyrani shielded their faces from the blast of wind and crushed soil. For a moment, time froze. No one knew what had just happened. Then the ship opened. A ramp dropped down with a hiss, revealing a dark interior filled with silhouettes, all armored, silent. They stepped out slowly at first, then in tight formation. Their armor was matte black with glowing blue lines humming across the plates. Their helmets covered their faces completely, but small lights on the sides flickered like living eyes. They carried weapons the Lyranny had never seen before, sleek, efficient, and deadly. There was no fear in their movements, no hesitation. They walked with the confidence of soldiers who had faced death 1,000 times, and they were humans, Deathworlders, elite special forces. The Marauders recognized them instantly, and the moment they did, a wave of panic ran through their ranks. Humans were known across the galaxy not for cruelty, but for something far more frightening: unstoppable determination. They came from the deadliest planet ever catalogued. Their bodies were stronger, their reflexes sharper, their instincts brutally precise, and their special forces. Even pirate captains whispered about them with fear. Before the raiders could regroup, the humans charged. The first group of pirates aimed their rifles, but the humans moved too quickly. They slid behind cover, firing shots that were almost silent but deadly. Each human's movements were smooth, practiced, like they were dancing through the battlefield. One soldier leaped forward, grabbing a marauder by the armor and slamming him to the ground in one clean motion. Another fired a burst of energy that disabled 3 enemy weapons before any of them could shoot. The air filled with flashes of blue light, and the deafening crack of collapsing armor. The Lyranny watched, mouths open, unable to believe their eyes. These humans fought like shadows, appearing, striking, disappearing. Every step they took was controlled, every attack precise. They didn't yell or shout or taunt. They didn't need to. Their silence was more terrifying than any war cry the Marauders had ever used. The pirates tried to counterattack. They launched rockets, fired heavy guns, and ordered their troops to swarm the humans. But the humans adapted instantly. They slid behind fallen debris, using the landscape as if they had trained on it for years. They lifted wounded Lyranny out of danger without breaking formation. They shot down rockets mid-air with perfect aim. Their weapons hummed softly, but every shot hit exactly where it needed to. The Marauders, who had once destroyed whole systems, were losing badly. Some tried to retreat to their drop, hoping to fly away before the humans reached them. But the Special Forces soldiers had already placed small triangular devices around the landing zone. When the pirates stepped near them, the devices activated with a loud snap, sending nets of electric light across the ground. The raiders collapsed, twitching helplessly as the humans moved swiftly past them. Others attempted to rush the humans with hand-to-hand weapons, thinking maybe close combat would give them a chance. But the humans met them head-on. One soldier used a short blade attached to his arm, slicing through a raider's weapon before delivering a quick strike to knock him unconscious. Another human flipped a marauder over her shoulder, kicking a second attacker backward without even turning to look. It was not a battle. It was a dismantling. Within minutes, entire squads of pirates were on the ground, their weapons disabled, their armor sparking and failing. The sky glowed blue from the fires of the damaged dropships. The Lyranny stood in stunned silence, unable to move. Their beautiful fields were scarred with craters and burn marks, but they were alive only because of the humans who had arrived like ghosts of war. Just before dawn broke, the last marauder ship tried to lift off. Its engines roared loudly as it shook the ground, rising slowly into the air. But a single human soldier stepped forward, aimed a small cylindrical device, and threw it with unbelievable accuracy. The device attached to the ship's hull beeped once, and then released a pulse of energy that shut the engines down instantly. The ship crashed back into the ground, not exploding, but becoming completely powerless. The battlefield finally fell quiet. The wind returned. The sky slowly brightened, and as the first rays of morning light touched the land, the Lyranny realized something unbelievable. The pirate army that had terrorized the galaxy for decades had been destroyed in less than one night. The humans stood still, breathing calmly, as if this had been nothing more than a routine training exercise. Their armor flickered softly, reflecting the gentle dawn. Then they turned toward the Lyranny, not with the coldness of soldiers, but with warmth, genuine concern for a species they had never met. The Lyranny felt tears in their eyes. They had expected death. They had seen invaders from the stars arrive to take everything, but instead, help had come fast, fierce, unexpected, and impossibly strong. No one understood why humans had answered the SOS signals so quickly, or why they had come with such power, or why they had fought with such intensity for a world that offered them nothing in return. But the Lyranny knew one thing with absolute certainty: this night, the darkest in their history, was also the night they learned who humans truly were. Not conquerors, not tyrants, protectors, the kind who would crash land straight into a war zone if it meant saving innocent lives. And as the sun rose fully, shining on the defeated invaders and the victorious defenders, the Lyranny felt hope begin to bloom again, hope shaped by the bravery of strangers who had arrived like falling stars and fought like legends. The first soft colors of sunrise began to spread across the sky, gently washing the battlefield in pale gold. The chaos of the night, the explosions, the fires, the screaming engines of the marauder ships was now giving way to a strange and quiet calm. Smoke drifted in the air like thin gray ribbons, carrying with it the fading smell of burned metal and cracked earth. The Lyrani, who had spent the long dark hours trembling in fear, stepped out of hiding one by one. They expected to see pirate flags still waving, or marauder soldiers marching through their towns. Instead, they saw something they had never imagined in their lifetime. The raider flagship, the massive, armored beast that had hovered above their planet like a symbol of doom, was no longer controlled by the marauders. Its giant landing ramp lay open, and human special forces soldiers stood at its entrance, weapons holstered, armor glowing faintly in the morning light. The crew inside had either thrown down their weapons or escaped in escape pods, leaving the ship silent and harmless. The vessel that once controlled the entire invasion was now under human command. It was a sight the Lyrani would remember for generations. A group of human soldiers had gathered the remaining pirate survivors in a controlled area far from the towns. They were not cruel or violent. They did not shout or strike the captured raiders. They simply tied their hands, kept watch, and waited for the proper authorities to arrive. Everything the humans did was quiet, controlled, and efficient, almost comforting to watch. The Lyrani elders, still unsure if it was safe, slowly approached the humans. Their robes were covered in dirt, their eyes red from crying, their hands shaking. They had prepared themselves for death just hours earlier. Now they walked towards the ones who had saved them, unsure of the right words to say. At the center of the flagship's massive shadow stood the human commander. His armor was cracked in several places from the night's fighting, and the blue lights running across his suit flickered softly with each movement. He had removed his helmet, revealing a calm, steady face with sharp eyes and a kind expression. Even though he looked tired, there was a sense of strength about him, like he carried the weight of 1,000 missions and still had room for one more. When he saw the Lyrani elders approaching, he stepped forward with slow, respectful steps. He placed his helmet under his arm and lowered his weapon so it pointed harmlessly at the ground. There was no arrogance, no pride in his walk, only calm reassurance. "You're safe now," he said gently. The Lyrani elders froze. They had expected something else, perhaps a demand, a warning, or a reminder of power. But instead, they were greeted with a simple message of peace. One elder, his voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind, asked, Is it really over?" The human commander nodded. "The danger has passed. There are no more raiders on your planet." The words felt unreal. Safe. They had not felt safe since the moment the marauders entered their sky. Some of the Lyrani began to cry openly, tears of relief, tears of confusion, tears of gratitude. Children who had clung to their parents all night loosened their grips. Neighbors hugged one another tightly. For the first time since the SOS signal had been sent into the void, they felt the weight in their hearts lift. A few of the younger Lyrani dared to approach the human soldiers. They touched the smooth metal of their armor with trembling hands, amazed that these fearsome warriors could also stand so still and gentle. The humans responded with small nods, sometimes even kneeling to appear less intimidating. For a species born on the most dangerous world ever discovered, they showed an extraordinary softness when dealing with the fragile Lyrani. The elders tried to speak again, but emotion choked their voices. They attempted to offer some form of gratitude. One elder stammered, We have little, but anything we have, you may take. Food, shelter, crystals, whatever you..." The human commander raised a hand gently to stop him. "We don't want anything from you." The Lyrani blinked, confused. No payment, no political agreements, no territory, no resources. The commander shook his head, almost amused by the question. "We're not here to take. We're here because you needed help." The statement was simple, but it carried a weight the Lyrani had never heard from any other species. Most powerful civilizations in the galaxy helped only when it benefited them. Some demanded trade agreements. Others asked for military bases, influence, or exclusive rights. A few simply ignored weaker species entirely, but the humans, they asked for nothing. After speaking with the elders, the commander signaled his squad. Immediately, the human soldiers spread throughout the damaged towns. They carried no weapons now. Instead, they brought equipment, supplies, and tools from their crashed transport ship and from the seized raider vessels. They moved through the streets, repairing destroyed power lines. Their gloved hands worked with precise skill, stitching cables and reconnecting circuits faster than any of the Lyrani engineers could believe. Within minutes, the lamps along the streets flickered on one by one. Houses that had been submerged in darkness began to glow with warm, soft light again. A group of humans set up portable medical stations. They laid out foldable tables, medical kits, and scanning devices. They treated injuries quickly and carefully, cleaning wounds, stabilizing broken limbs, and giving gentle instructions to frightened patients. Human medics knelt beside children and spoke to them softly, showing them small tools and making them smile. Another squad began examining the damage to the main water purification plant. They worked in synchronized motion, analyzing structural weaknesses, rebuilding the filtration panels, and restoring the pumps that fed the entire settlement. When clean water began flowing again, the Lyrani gasped as if witnessing a miracle. Even the structures that had been partially destroyed, homes with broken walls, towers shattered by energy, fire, bridges torn by explosions, were repaired with surprising speed. The humans worked side by side with the Lyrani, lifting heavy beams with their enhanced strength and using portable fabrication tools to reseal broken metal. There was no complaint, no hesitation, not even a hint of arrogance. They helped as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. The Lyrani could not understand it. These humans had fought the most dangerous pirates in known space, taken over their flagship, saved an entire planet, and now they were helping mend walls and fix gardens. They never once acted like conquerors or saviors. They didn't take pictures, didn't ask for statues, didn't demand tribute. They simply worked. As the morning grew brighter, the commander walked among his soldiers, checking on progress. Every time a Lyrani thanked him, he brushed it aside with a quiet smile. "You would do the same," he would say, though everyone knew that was not true, not because the Lyrani lacked kindness, but because they lacked the strength the humans possessed. When the essential structures were finally stable and the towns were safe again, the humans gathered their equipment. Their transport ship, though damaged, had been partly repaired by their own engineers. Its engines hummed softly, ready to lift off once more. The Lyrani felt a strange sadness rising inside them. These warriors had arrived like storm winds, saved them from destruction, and helped them rebuild. The thought of them leaving so soon felt almost painful. One elder approached the commander again. "You're leaving?" he asked softly. The human nodded. "Our work here is finished. There are others in the galaxy who might need our help." The elder shook his head slowly. "You fight like legends, but you act like humble travelers. Why?" For the first time, the commander looked slightly puzzled, as if the question had never occurred to him. After a moment, he replied, "Because that's what we're supposed to do." To the humans, saving the Lyrani had not been an extraordinary act. It had not been a great heroic mission that required songs or celebrations. It had simply been their job duty written into their hearts long before they reached the stars. The Special Forces soldiers boarded their ship quietly. No parade, no grand farewell. They simply gathered their gear, secured their helmets, and prepared for departure. The engine swarmed, the air shimmered, and dust swirled around the landing zone. The Lyrani stood together, watching their hearts full. They wanted to call out. They wanted to beg the humans to stay longer, to teach them, to guide them. But they also knew that these protectors belonged to the entire galaxy, not just to one world. Before the ship lifted off, the commander stepped down the ramp one last time. He gave a brief nod to the Lyrani leaders. "If you ever need us again," he said, "send the signal." And with that, he turned and disappeared inside. The black transport ship rose smoothly into the bright blue sky, climbing higher and higher until it became nothing more than a dot of light. Then it vanished completely. The Lyrani stood in silence for a long time, feeling the warmth of the new day and the strange emptiness left behind by their unexpected saviors. They had survived. They had been protected. And though the humans asked for nothing, the Lyrani knew they would never forget the night when strangers from a deadly world came to defend them without hesitation, without reward, and without expecting anything in return. The news spread through the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. It moved through trade networks, diplomatic channels, pirate communications, government archives, and even gossip networks used by wandering travelers. Everywhere the story went, people reacted with the same mixture of confusion and disbelief. Entire star systems paused to ask the same question. Why would the humans, the feared Deathworlders, respond so quickly, so decisively, and with so much force to an SOS from a tiny, harmless species like the Lyrani? It didn't make sense to anyone. In great halls of government, ambassadors whispered about it urgently. In crowded spaceports, merchants argued over half-true versions of the event. In the dark corners of pirate rings, the story was retold with fear-struck voices. Some claimed that the humans intercepted the SOS accidentally. Some said they responded out of boredom. A few insisted the humans were using the rescue as a way to show dominance. In bars on distant planets, bounty hunters argued that humans were unpredictable creatures who could not be explained by normal logic. Others argued the opposite, that humanity was too soft-hearted and sentimental, and that they kept interfering in conflicts because they had some strange need to protect others, no matter who spoke. The confusion remained the same. People simply couldn't understand the logic behind what the humans had done. Why risk elite soldiers? Why deploy special forces? Why enter a battle that offered no political advantage, no wealth, no territory? Why help a species who had nothing to give in return? Analysts debated these questions endlessly. Some believed humans did it because they enjoyed fighting. The title Deathworlder made many species assume humans were naturally violent. They imagined Earth as a planet where every creature woke up angry and eager for combat. To those analysts, the rescue of the Lyrani was not an act of kindness but a chance for humans to flex their strength. But others disagreed. They studied human history and found patterns of compassion hidden inside the chaos. They pointed to ancient human missions on Earth where people risked their lives to save strangers. They noticed that humans often helped even when it made no strategic sense. These scholars argued that perhaps humanity acted not out of aggression, but out of something more complicated, something softer, something that other species found difficult to understand. Some even suggested that humans carried a kind of emotional instinct, a deep, natural urge to protect weaker species, just like they protected their own young. These analysts were laughed at by many, but a few listened closely. After all, the galaxy had witnessed human behavior many times before, and each time the same pattern appeared. If someone asked for help, humans answered even when they had no reason to. Meanwhile, on distant worlds, the more fearful species found the event terrifying. To them, humans were already the most unpredictable life form in the known universe. They were strong, adaptable, emotional, intelligent, and capable of incredible violence when pushed. And now, the galaxy learned that humans were also willing to launch military action without political motivation. That made them even harder to predict. If humans could not be bribed, controlled, or manipulated, what did that mean? Was their kindness a strength or a danger? Whole councils debated this for days. Some species suggested strengthening defenses in case humanity's unpredictable protection turned into unpredictable aggression. Others argued that building trust with humans was the safest path. A few leaders, older and wiser, simply said, "We do not understand them yet." And they were right. Humanity was still young in interstellar history. Their journeys among the stars were not well documented or fully studied. Their motives were unclear, their emotional reactions unpredictable. They could make alliances quickly but also break them fiercely when betrayed. They were a species of contradictions. But the Lyrani did not see any of this. While powerful nations built theories and politicians argued in enormous halls, the Lyrani lived with a memory of what had actually happened. They didn't need debates. They didn't need someone to explain humanity to them. They knew the truth from their own eyes. They remembered the night when burning dropships fell from the sky. They remembered the sound of explosions echoing through their forests. They remembered the terror of seeing pirate soldiers march toward their homes. And they remembered the exact moment the humans arrived, like fire streaking across the heavens. They remembered how the special forces landed with precision and silence, how they fought with discipline, skill, and breathtaking power, how they protected every Lyrani they found, how they restored energy grids, healed wounded civilians, and rebuilt broken structures, how they never asked for anything, not even gratitude, and how when the world was safe, they simply left. For the Lyrani, the answer was simple. The humans came because someone asked for help. They didn't need a reward. They didn't need a reason. They just came. The Lyrani had never met a species like that before. After the humans departed, life slowly returned to normal on Lyranus, for the trees glowed once again. The silver rivers flowed peacefully. The crystal homes were repaired. But something in the hearts of the Lyrani had changed forever. They began telling stories about the humans, passing the tale from parent to child, from teacher to student. At first they struggled to find the right word to describe their saviors. Warriors didn't feel correct, because the humans fought only to protect. Heroes didn't feel accurate, because the humans refused to be celebrated. Rescuers felt too small for the scale of what had happened. Eventually, the Lyrani found a term that felt right. They called the humans Star Guardians. The name began quietly. One child said it after hearing the story. An elder repeated it during a community gathering. A poet carved the phrase onto a crystal sculpture in the town's center. Soon, the whole planet used it with love and respect. To them, Star Guardians didn't mean conquerors or soldiers. It meant protectors, those who watched the galaxy from afar and came only when they were truly needed. The name spread to visitors, traders, travelers, and eventually to neighboring systems. Some laughed at it, finding it dramatic. Others found it fitting. The humans themselves never reacted to the name. Most of them didn't even know it existed. But among the Lyrani, it became secreta title to honor the night when the universe's most feared species became their protectors. Across the galaxy, the event continued to stir discussions. News anchors debated whether humanity's compassion made them dangerous. Some said the humans acted like guardians of justice. Others argued that their unpredictability made them a wild card. Diplomats wondered if this rescue meant humanity was building secret alliances. Militaries wondered if they should prepare for new human-led interventions. Even criminals and pirates whispered nervously about the sudden appearance of human special forces in a region no one expected them to enter. One pirate captain famously announced to his crew, "If humans are answering random SOS calls, we're done. We're finished." They don't negotiate. They don't bluff. They just show up and crush everything. His words spread through criminal networks like poison, causing several pirate groups to avoid regions near Lyranus for 4 months. But for the Lyrani, none of that mattered. They had looked into the eyes of the humans themselves. They had seen their motives not through theories, but through experience. They had seen a kind of courage that wasn't loud or proud, a kind of power that didn't need to prove itself, a kind of compassion that felt strange coming from a species so physically intimidating. Night after night, the Lyrani sat together under the glowing trees and retold the story. In some versions, they emphasized the moment the human ship crashed down like a thunderbolt. In others, they described the silent discipline with which the soldiers swept through the battlefield. Sometimes the story focused on the gentle way human medics helped injured children. Other times it highlighted the moment the human commander said, "You're safe now." Each retelling made the memory settle deeper into their hearts. It became part of their cultural identity, something they would never forget. Even centuries later, Lironi children would grow up hearing stories of the Star Guardians. Teachers would speak of humanity's bravery during history lessons. Artists would paint murals of the battle. Musicians would compose songs inspired by the event. Festivals would include storytelling sessions where elders described the night fear was transformed into hope. And though the Deathworlders special forces returned to the shadows of space, continuing their missions across unknown regions, their presence stayed in the hearts of the Lironi. Every time the planet's communication tower flickered with starlight, the Lironi would remember the night they sent out a desperate call for help. They remembered how they expected silence, or maybe a late response, or perhaps a refusal. But instead, the most unexpected answer came. The galaxy's most feared species arrived first. They came not for glory, not for power, not for conquest. They came because someone was afraid. Someone needed help. Someone called out into the darkness, and the humans heard them. From that day forward, whenever Lironi children looked up at the stars, they felt no fear. They felt gratitude, because somewhere out there, crossing the dark oceans of space, were the Star Guardians, and the Lironi knew that if danger ever returned, they would not face it alone.